Hey guys, tonight we're going to explore why it truly was exhausting to be in love during the Victorian era. So get your favourite late night snack, get cozy, and let your mind relax while we dive deep into the world of Victorian era dating scene. If you find comfort here, kindly subscribe or share our channel with friends seeking peace and wonder in their quiet evenings. Let us begin this gentle journey together, when expressing feelings required navigating a maze of social rules, coded messages, and watchful chaperones. Imagine yearning for someone while trapped within society's rigid constraints, where a stolen glance could spark scandal and a touch of hands might ruin reputations. Settle in as we journey to a time when love required courage, patience, and incredible creativity simply to exist. Chapter 1. Yearning in an Era of Constraints. Step into a posh Victorian drawing room where afternoon light filters through heavy curtains onto polished mahogany furniture. The air carries the delicate fragrance of Earl Grey tea and fresh roses from the garden. An ornate grandfather clock marks time with steady, measured ticks. Here, in this world of silk gowns and starched collars, we meet our protagonists, souls confined by their era's unforgiving rules. Lady Catherine adjusts her emerald silk gown, its fabric rustling softly with each movement. Her gloved hands rest primly in her lap, as she pours tea with practiced elegance across the room. Mr. Edmund watches her graceful gestures from behind his newspaper. Both are trapped in their respective roles. She, the dutiful daughter of an earl. He, a gentleman bound by propriety. Their hearts harbour feelings they dare not speak aloud. The drawing room becomes a stage for unspoken desires, every gesture carefully calculated, every word measured for appropriateness. Catherine's fingers trace the rim of her teacup as she steals a glance toward Edmund. He clears his throat softly, pretending to read while absorbing her every movement. The grandfather clock continues its relentless rhythm. Time passes, but their true feelings remain imprisoned behind walls of social expectation and fear. In this world, love is a dangerous game played with the subtlest of moves. A fan held in a certain position might signal interest. A dropped handkerchief could invite approach, but one wrong gesture observed by the wrong person could spell social ruin. Catherine and Edmund exist in separate spheres, she among the elite's daughters, he among society's gentlemen. Their worlds may overlap, but they must never truly touch without consequence. The weight of expectation presses down like the heavy velvet drapes adorning the windows. Catherine's mother watches from across the room with eagle eyes, ensuring her daughter's posture remains perfect, her conversation appropriate. Edmund's own family has already selected a suitable bride from their social circle. Yet here they sit, hearts yearning across the divide of propriety, each aware of the other's presence, like flowers drawn toward sunlight. The scent of bergamot rises from delicate china cups as conversation flows in careful, approved channels. Weather, literature, music, safe topics that reveal nothing of the heart's true desires. Catherine speaks of Chopin's nocturnes, while thinking of moonlit walks with Edmund. He discusses the morning's hunt, while imagining stolen moments in garden shadows. Their words create a dance of distance, while their souls cry out for connection. Every element of the room reinforces their separation. The wide expanse of Persian carpet between their chairs, the watchful portraits of ancestors who enforced these very rules, the heavy mahogany table laden with silver serving pieces that gleam like barriers in the afternoon light. Even the air itself seems thick with unspoken restrictions. Love here requires the patience of saints and the cunning of spies to flourish. As the afternoon progresses, small rebellions emerge. Catherine allows her gaze to linger just a moment longer. When passing Edmund his tea, he accepts the cup with fingers that briefly brush hers through thin lace gloves. These tiny transgressions feel monumental in a world where such contact is scrutinized and judged. Their hearts race from touches that would seem innocent to modern eyes, but carry the weight of revolution. The grandfather clock chimes 4, and with it comes the harsh reality of time's passage. Soon, this sanctioned gathering will end. Edmund will return to his studies, Catherine to her embroidery and French lessons. They will retreat to separate worlds where their feelings must be carefully hidden, like precious jewels in locked boxes. The Victorian era demands such sacrifice from those brave enough to love. In this society, reputation is everything. A lady's virtue must be beyond question. Her behaviour above reproach. A gentleman's honour depends on respecting these boundaries, even when his heart begs him to cross them. Catherine understands that one misstep could ruin her family's standing. Edmund knows that improper advances could destroy his career prospects. Love becomes a luxury few can afford at its true price. The rules governing their interaction are as numerous as the roses in the estate garden. Never be alone together without a chaperone. Maintain appropriate physical distance. Speak only of suitable topics. Express admiration through carefully coded language that reveals nothing direct. Even letters require third-party approval. These constraints turn natural human connection into an elaborate maze where one wrong turn leads to social destruction. As shadows lengthen across the drawing room floor, the weight of these restrictions becomes almost tangible, like invisible chains binding their hearts. Catherine's silk gown suddenly feels confining. Edmund's collar seems too tight. They exist in a world that fears passionate love, preferring arranged matches based on social compatibility and financial advantage. True affection is seen as dangerous, unpredictable, potentially destructive to established order. Yet within these constraints, love finds ways to bloom like wild flowers pushing through stone. Catherine and Edmund communicate through glances that speak volumes, through the selection of books left casually visible, through musical choices at evening gatherings. They develop a language of the heart that operates beneath society's watchful gaze. Their love becomes an act of quiet rebellion against suffocating convention. The chapter closes with both protagonists understanding the enormity of their challenge. To love in the Victorian era meant accepting that their feelings might never be fully expressed or realised, that society's approval mattered more than personal happiness, that one's heart must often bow to duty's demands. Yet something in their shared glances suggests that true love, however constrained, finds ways to endure and even flourish despite seemingly impossible odds. Chapter 2. Language of Love. Unspoken Signals. In Victorian drawing rooms, where words failed, the heart found other ways to speak. A stolen glance across a crowded parlour could carry the weight of 1,000 whispered confessions. The flutter of a fan, the drop of a handkerchief, the subtle positioning of a teacup. These became the alphabet of affection, each gesture carefully crafted to convey what society forbade them to say aloud. The language of flowers bloomed in this restrictive world. Each bloom carried its own secret message, transforming innocent bouquets into passionate love letters. A single red rose whispered, "I love you," while yellow roses spoke of friendship alone. Forget-me-nots pleaded, "Remember me always," and daisies proclaimed, "I share your feelings." Young lovers became botanists of the heart, studying floriography with the dedication of scholars deciphering ancient texts. Isabella learned this coded language with trembling fingers as she arranged violets in her morning bouquet. Each purple petal seemed to pulse with meaning. Violets meant modesty, but when paired with ivy, they whispered of fidelity. She would place them carefully in her window, hoping Thomas would understand. The scent of the flowers mingled with her nervous breath as she waited for his response, a coded message in return. Thomas walked past her window each morning at precisely 9, his heart racing as he searched for signs. Today white jasmine cascaded from her windowsill. His pulse quickened as he recalled its meaning, amiability, but more importantly, attachment. She was telling him something precious. He touched the small nosegay in his coat pocket, his own message carefully arranged. pink roses for admiration, surrounded by sweet alyssum for worth beyond beauty. In the drawing room, their eyes became accomplices across the chaperone-filled space. A single glance could ignite storms of feeling. Isabella would lower her gaze when he looked her way, then lift it slowly, allowing him one heartbeat of connection before propriety demanded she look away. Thomas learned to read the angle of her head, the way she held her hands, the subtle tilt of her smile when speaking to others. The weight of unspoken words hung heavy in the parlour air. Every innocent conversation carried double meanings. Every casual comment was scrutinized for hidden messages. When Isabella mentioned her fondness for evening walks, Thomas understood. When he spoke of his love for moonlit gardens, she caught the invitation. Their chaperones heard only polite conversation, but between them, entire courtship narratives unfolded in whispered code. The softness of rose petals between her fingers became meditation. Isabella would touch each bloom she arranged, imagining Thomas receiving her floral message. Would he understand that the single white camellia meant "you're adorable," or would he miss the yellow tulips that declared hopeless love? Her fingertips traced the delicate edges, each petal a word she couldn't speak, each thorn a reminder of society's sharp restrictions on her heart. Thomas discovered poetry in botanical dictionaries, late at night, by candlelight. He studied the meanings of common flowers like a scholar preparing for examinations. Orange blossoms for eternal love, lavender for devotion, rosemary for remembrance. He memorized each meaning, dreaming of the day he might arrange Isabella a bouquet that would tell her everything, a love letter written in petals and leaves, fragrant with possibility and hope. Their secret language evolved beyond flowers, the placement of a book on a table, the way she held her fan, even how she poured tea became meaningful. If Isabella stirred her tea clockwise, it meant she was thinking of him. If she left her gloves on the piano, she hoped to see him soon. Thomas learned to decode every gesture, finding love letters written in the mundane details of Victorian etiquette. The scent of her garden reached him through the evening air as Thomas passed her family's estate. The fragrance of night-blooming jasmine, mixed with roses, created an invisible bridge between them. He would pause, breathing deeply, knowing that somewhere behind those windows, Isabella was perhaps thinking of him. The very air seemed perfumed with their unspoken connection, sweet and intoxicating, despite the distance that propriety demanded they maintain. In church, their coded conversations continued. Isabella would drop her prayer book at precisely the moment she knew Thomas would be looking. He would adjust his cravat twice if he planned to walk past her home that afternoon. Even in this sacred space, surrounded by family and watchful eyes, their hearts found ways to reach across the pews and speak in languages older than words. The tension between desire and decorum grew stronger each day. Every stolen glance carried the weight of consequences. If caught in their silent communications, both families would be scandalized. Isabella's reputation would suffer. Thomas might be forbidden from calling, yet still they continued their dangerous dance of unspoken affection. Each signal a small rebellion against society's suffocating rules. Love finding ways to bloom despite the frost. Mrs. Patterson, Isabella's ever-watchful chaperone, began to notice patterns, the way Isabella's cheeks flushed when certain young gentlemen called, how she lingered near windows at specific times. Suspicion crept into the older woman's observations, like shadows lengthening at dusk. She made mental notes, preparing to share her concerns with Isabella's mother. The walls were slowly closing in around their secret language. Thomas felt the growing scrutiny like a physical presence. Conversations seemed to halt when he entered rooms, and Isabella's father began asking pointed questions about his intentions. The delicate web of signals and symbols they had woven was becoming visible to others. He realized their coded communications might not remain secret much longer. The flower language that had once felt like freedom was becoming a trap of expectations. Isabella sensed the changing atmosphere in her household. Her mother's questions became more direct, her chaperone more vigilant. The innocent flower arrangements she had once enjoyed now felt like evidence of some unnamed crime. Yet, even as the walls closed in, she found herself unable to stop. Her heart had learned this language of love too well to simply forget it now. The risk made every signal more precious. As autumn approached, both lovers understood that their season of secret signals was ending. The comfortable days of coded glances and flower messages were giving way to harder realities. Soon, declarations would need to be made openly, formally. Parents would need to be approached, intentions stated clearly. Their beautiful language of unspoken love was about to collide with the harsh grammar of Victorian courtship. The real test was yet to come. Chapter 3. Behind velvet curtains, chaperones, and Victorian values. In drawing rooms across Victorian England, love bloomed under the most watchful eyes. The chaperone, society's appointed guardian of virtue and propriety, these ever-present figures sat like silent sentinels, their keen gazes missing nothing, not a lingering touch, not a whispered word, not even the flutter of an eyelash. For in this world of rigid decorum, romance required the most delicate navigation. Picture the scene: elegant parlours adorned with burgundy velvet and golden trim, where young couples sat precisely 3 feet apart, conversation flowing through carefully chosen words. Between them, the chaperone, usually an unmarried aunt or stern matron, her embroidery needle moving rhythmically, while her ears remained perfectly attuned to every syllable. Love, it seemed, had become a performance observed by the most critical of audiences, passion constrained by protocol. Our lovers learned to speak in a language only they understood, a raised eyebrow conveying volumes, a slight lean forward suggesting longing, the rustle of silk as she adjusted her skirts, each movement deliberate yet seemingly innocent. He would clear his throat softly, a sound that meant "I adore you," while the chaperone's needlework continued, her presence both blessing and burden. Love reduced to these whispered gestures beneath watchful, disapproving eyes. The afternoon stretched like eternity, each stolen glance a precious currency in their silent economy of affection. She dared to let her fingers brush the arm of her chair, closer to where his hand rested, the space between them charged with unspoken desire. Yet the chaperone's shadow fell across their hopes like a persistent cloud. Every moment measured, every breath calculated, romance becoming an elaborate dance of restraint and hidden meaning. Tea service arrived with its ritual of propriety. China cups clinked gently as she poured with practiced grace, her movements elegant yet constrained. He watched her hands, memorizing each delicate gesture. When their fingers accidentally touched, reaching for the sugar bowl, both quickly withdrew as if burned. The chaperone's sharp intake of breath reminded them that even the smallest contact carried weight. Affection became precious, precisely because it was so carefully rationed. Conversation turned to safe topics: the weather, recent exhibitions, mutual acquaintances. Yet beneath these mundane words ran an undercurrent of deeper meaning. When he mentioned the beauty of morning light, she understood he spoke of her smile. When she praised the persistence of autumn roses, he heard her declaration of enduring affection. The chaperone listened carefully, searching for impropriety in their coded language. But love, it seemed, found ways to flow around even the strongest barriers. A book lay forgotten on the side table, its pages filled with passionate poetry they longed to share, yet such literature remained forbidden in mixed company. She glanced toward it meaningfully, and he understood, later perhaps, in carefully composed letters, they might reference Browning's sonnets, but for now, their own poetry existed in the space between words, in pauses that spoke volumes, in the gentle rebellion of hearts refusing to be entirely contained. The chaperone's needlework grew more complex, intricate patterns emerging from her steady hands. Perhaps she too remembered what it felt like to love, to feel one's heart race at a simple word, yet duty bound her to preserve the conventions that made such feelings dangerous. She became both obstacle and protector, ensuring that love, if it were to flourish, would do so within society's rigid framework. Passion carefully pruned like roses in a formal garden. The clock's steady ticking marked the passage of precious time, each moment in his presence, a gift to be treasured. She found herself counting the beats, knowing their visit must soon end. Propriety demanded that courtship follow strict schedules, no spontaneous meetings, no unplanned encounters, everything orchestrated by families and social expectation. Yet within these constraints, authentic feeling grew stronger, like flowers pushing through cobblestones. Love found its way to light. He shifted slightly in his chair, a movement that brought him perhaps an inch closer. The chaperone's eyes flickered up from her embroidery. Noting the transgression, he returned to his proper position, but the message had been sent and received. She smoothed her dress nervously, her pulse quickening. These tiny rebellions felt monumental in a world where propriety governed every gesture, where the smallest departure from protocol could destroy a carefully cultivated reputation. Afternoon shadows began lengthening across the Persian carpet. Soon, social convention would demand his departure. She felt panic rising at the thought. When would they meet again? When would she hear his voice, see his smile? The chaperone began gathering her threads, signalling the visit's inevitable end. Yet still they sat, neither willing to acknowledge time's passage, as if by refusing to speak of leaving, they could suspend this moment in amber. A carriage rumbled past the window, its wheels on cobblestones marking time's relentless march. She turned toward the sound, and he saw her profile, the curve of her cheek, the set of her shoulders, memorizing details to sustain him through the coming days. The chaperone cleared her throat meaningfully, duty calling them back to proper behavior. Yet for this moment, they existed in their own world, a world where hearts spoke directly to hearts. Something shifted in the room's atmosphere, tension crackling like electricity before a storm. Their eyes met across the prescribed distance, and in that gaze lay everything they could not say: longing, frustration, determination. The chaperone sensed the change, her needlework stilling in her hands. This silent exchange contained more passion than 1,000 whispered endearments, two souls reaching across the void of Victorian propriety, refusing to be entirely separated. In his eyes, she saw her own desperation reflected, the exhaustion of constantly measuring words, monitoring gestures, suppressing natural feeling. Love should not require such careful choreography. Yet here they were, prisoners of expectation and propriety. The chaperone rose abruptly, perhaps sensing the dangerous current flowing between them, her movement breaking the spell, reminding them of their watched and measured existence, passion caged within gilded bars of respectability. He stood reluctantly, knowing the visit must end. She remained seated as propriety demanded, though every fibre of her being wanted to rise, to walk him to the door, to extend these precious moments. Instead, she offered a gloved hand for the briefest of formal farewells. Their fingers touched through layers of silk and convention, a moment of connection that would have to sustain them through the long days ahead. As the door closed behind him, silence settled over the drawing room like dust. The chaperone resumed her needlework, saying nothing about the charged atmosphere that had filled the space. She too had been young once, had felt love's persistent pull against society's restraints, but duty demanded silence. And so the afternoon ended as it began, with unspoken feelings echoing between velvet curtains. Love deferred but never defeated. Chapter 4. Prelude to a Courtship. Etiquettes and Protocols. After surviving the social battlefield of Victorian flirtation, couples faced an even greater challenge: the formal courtship itself. Here, love transformed from whispered glances into a carefully choreographed dance of rules and regulations. Every gesture was scrutinized, every word weighed, every moment planned according to society's unforgiving handbook. Welcome to courtship, where romance met bureaucracy in the most peculiar ways. The Victorian courtship was nothing if not systematic. Think of it as love by committee, where passion had to file paperwork before proceeding. First came the formal introduction, orchestrated by mutual acquaintances who served as romantic ambassadors. No chance encounters or serendipitous meetings here. Every courtship began with proper channels, witness testimonies, and character references. Love might strike like lightning, but Victorian society insisted it follow proper electrical codes. Once introductions were made, the real performance began. Calling hours were established with military precision. Gentlemen could visit between 2 and 5 in the afternoon. Never before, heaven forbid, never after. The drawing room became a stage where suitors performed their worthiness through polite conversation and impeccable manners. Meanwhile, sharp-eyed chaperones monitored every syllable, every glance, ready to intervene at the first hint of impropriety. Romance under surveillance, one might say. Physical contact during courtship required a doctorate in etiquette. The famous right way to hold hands was indeed a science. Fingertips only, brief duration, preferably while walking or dancing. Anything more was scandalous. A gentleman's hand on a lady's elbow while assisting her into a carriage was acceptable on her waist, absolutely forbidden. These rules were so detailed they might have required instruction manuals. Love, it seems, needed proper licensing to operate. The timing of romantic declarations followed strict seasonal schedules. Spring brought tentative courtship beginnings, summer allowed for deeper acquaintance, autumn was deemed appropriate for serious intentions, and winter, well, winter was for proposals or polite withdrawals. Gentlemen couldn't simply follow their hearts. They had to consult calendars first. Imagine planning your emotional life around equinoxes and solstices. Yet somehow, despite these constraints, love still managed to bloom in the most regimented gardens. Gift-giving became an elaborate code requiring cryptographic skills. Flowers carried specific meanings. Yellow roses meant friendship. Red meant passion. White suggested pure intentions. A single wrong bloom could send the entirely incorrect message. Books were safe but revealing. Poetry was romantic yet respectable. Jewelry was too forward unless it was a simple brooch or modest locket. Every present was a diplomatic mission where one wrong move could end negotiations permanently. Conversation topics were carefully curated, like museum exhibitions. Weather was always acceptable. Literature was encouraged, but avoid anything too passionate. Travel was delightful, if properly chaperoned. Politics were generally forbidden, unless the lady specifically invited such discussion. Religion was suitable, but not denominational debates. But art lay in appearing intelligent, while remaining utterly unthreatening. Think of it as intellectual dancing in very restrictive shoes, graceful yet limited in movement. Writing letters required its own specialized education. The greeting alone demanded careful consideration. Dear Miss was proper for acquaintances. My dear Miss suggested growing affection. Dearest was reserved for established courtships. The closing was equally fraught. Yours respectfully maintained distance. Yours truly showed warmth. Yours devotedly was almost a declaration. Every comma carried weight. Every word choice was analysed for hidden meanings. Love letters became legal documents in the court of social opinion. Dancing provided the most thrilling yet terrifying moments of courtship. Here, couples could actually touch hands, waist, shoulders, all sanctioned by society, for precisely 3 minutes and 20 seconds. But even this brief intimacy came with rules. No excessive pressure, no lingering gazes, no whispered words that others couldn't hear. The waltz was romantic revolution contained within strict parameters. Passion was permitted, but only in measured doses and proper time signatures. Chaperones were the courtship industry's quality control department. These vigilant guardians possessed supernatural hearing and peripheral vision that would shame security cameras. They could detect inappropriate behavior from across crowded ballrooms, sense romantic tension through drawing room walls, a slight lean too close, a laugh held too long, a glance that lingered beyond acceptable duration. All were noted in their mental files. Love under such scrutiny required nerves of steel and the acting skills of seasoned theatre professionals. The engagement period brought its own labyrinthine protocols. Once formally announced, couples enjoyed slightly relaxed supervision. They could walk together with minimal chaperoning, sit closer during family gatherings, even exchange small tokens of affection. Yet even engagement had its rules. Public displays remained forbidden. Private moments were carefully scheduled. The engagement ring itself required family approval and financial disclosure. Romance had become a business merger with emotional benefits. Family approval was the ultimate gatekeeping mechanism. Parents investigated suitors with detective-like thoroughness. Financial stability, family reputation, moral character, even health records were scrutinized. Love matches were lovely, but practical considerations ruled supreme. A charming penniless poet stood little chance against a boring but wealthy banker. Families weren't just gaining a daughter or son-in-law, they were forming strategic alliances. Romance was delightful, but solvency was essential for long-term happiness. The proposal itself required theatrical staging. Worthy of grand opera, location had to be appropriate, private yet respectable. The library was classic, the garden romantic but weather-dependent. Timing was crucial, not too early in courtship, not so late as to appear presumptuous. The words required careful rehearsal. Too flowery was ridiculous, too simple seemed careless, and the lady's response, well, that followed its own elaborate script of modest acceptance or gracious deflection. Despite all these suffocating protocols, genuine love somehow persevered. Couples learned to communicate through glances that lasted just acceptable durations, developed their own subtle languages of meaningful silences, found romance in the briefest touch of fingertips during proper greetings. True affection created its own secret codes within society's rigid framework. Love, it turned out, was remarkably adaptable, blooming even in the most restrictive gardens when tended by determined hearts. The irony was delicious. These elaborate rules designed to prevent improper romance often intensified the very feelings they sought to control. Forbidden glances became more meaningful than permitted conversations. Brief touches carried more electricity than hours of supervised socializing. Restriction bred intensity. Formality fostered deeper appreciation. Perhaps Victorian society inadvertently discovered that love grows stronger when challenged, that passion burns brighter when properly banked, rather than freely expressed. As we prepare to witness these elaborate courtship protocols in action, remember that beneath all these rules beat hearts, no different from our own. Victorian lovers experienced the same butterflies, the same longing, the same desperate hope that their affections might be returned. They simply had to navigate a much more complicated maze to reach the same destination. Next, we'll watch as real couples attempt to court within these impossible constraints. Love versus etiquette in the ultimate Victorian challenge. Chapter 5. Sonnets of the Heart. Victorian Correspondence. In the hushed hours between dawn and society's awakening, quill meets parchment in trembling hands. Here, behind closed doors and drawn curtains, two hearts discover freedom through ink and paper. The rustle of fine stationery becomes their secret symphony, each letter a lifeline cast across the gulf of propriety, carrying whispered confessions that daylight would never dare to hear. In these stolen moments, love finds its voice through careful coded words. The scritch-scratch of the nib, becomes a rhythm of rebellion, each stroke defying the suffocating expectations that bind their public selves. She dips her pen with careful precision, the ink flowing like liquid courage onto cream-coloured paper. He waits by the window for her reply, watching carriages pass while his heart pounds with anticipation. These letters transform mundane afternoons into adventures of the heart, written words carrying the weight of unspoken dreams and forbidden desires. Between the lines, passion blooms in metaphor and illusion, roses become symbols of longing. Storms mirror inner turmoil. She writes of spring gardens when speaking of hope, of winter landscapes when fear creeps in. He responds with verses about starlit skies and endless oceans. Their private language evolves, each shared reference deepening their connection. These coded conversations create an intimate world where Victorian restraint dissolves, replaced by raw emotion flowing freely through carefully chosen words and hidden meanings. The weight of his letters in her hands feels like holding pieces of his soul. She traces each word with fingertips that wish they could trace his face instead. The paper carries his scent, faint but unmistakable, a mixture of tobacco and lavender water that makes her pulse quicken. She presses each letter to her heart before reading, feeling the texture of his thoughts made tangible. These fragile sheets become her most treasured possessions, hidden beneath silk scarves in her writing desk. His study becomes a sanctuary of scattered drafts and ink-stained fingers. He writes and rewrites, searching for perfect words to capture impossible feelings. The firelight flickers across pages, filled with crossed-out lines and desperate revisions. How does one describe the ache of wanting someone you cannot have? How do you speak of love when society forbids the very word? His wastebasket overflows with rejected attempts. While somewhere across town, she waits for his next masterpiece of affection. Her replies arrive like small miracles wrapped in lavender-scented envelopes. The elegant curves of her penmanship dance across the page, each letter formed with deliberate grace. She writes of music that moves her to tears, of books that transport her beyond drawing-room walls. He discovers her brilliant mind through these exchanges, falling deeper with each revelation. Their correspondence becomes a courtship of souls, unbound by the physical restrictions that govern their stolen glances across crowded ballrooms. Poetry flows from their pens like rivers breaking through winter ice, sonnets about moonlit walks they'll never take, verses celebrating touches they dare not dream. She discovers a talent for imagery that surprises her own heart. He finds himself crafting metaphors that would make published poets weep with envy. Their amateur verses carry more truth than any printed collection. Love transforms them both into artists, painting emotions with words when brushes and canvas feel inadequate. The ritual of sealing each letter becomes an act of faith, hot wax dripping onto folded secrets, the press of her signet ring marking ownership of untold truths. He chooses his seal carefully, knowing she'll trace its impression with wondering fingers. These small ceremonies transform ordinary correspondence into something sacred. The weight of each sealed envelope carries hopes and fears across town, through bustling streets where their public selves pretend indifference, while their hearts race toward connection. Time bends around their secret exchange. Minutes crawl when waiting for delivery. Hours vanish while composing responses. She marks calendar days by his letters, counting sunrise to sunset in terms of his words. He haunts his front hall like a lovesick ghost, ears tuned to approaching footsteps. Their world contracts to this paper bridge, spanning impossible distance. Morning posts become lifelines, afternoon deliveries the highlight of carefully orchestrated days built around these fragile connections. Her writing desk becomes an altar to impossible love, inkwell and blotter arranged with ceremonial precision, fresh quills sharpened to perfect points. She keeps dried flowers between favourite letters, pressing memories into portable form. He saves every envelope, building a treasury of hope in his locked drawer. These physical tokens transform abstract longing into something tangible. Paper and ink become holy relics in the religion of their forbidden affection, worshipped in stolen moments of solitude. Rain against windows creates the perfect soundtrack for confession. She writes her deepest truths while storms rage outside. As if nature provides cover for emotional honesty, he discovers that thunderous nights inspire his most passionate verses. Weather becomes their accomplice, creating atmosphere for letters that bare souls completely. Candlelight flickers across tear-stained pages, where joy and sorrow blend like watercolors. These storm-written letters carry extra weight, born from moments when the world feels wild enough to match their hearts. Fear creeps into their paradise like autumn frost. What if someone discovers their cache of letters? What if her father finds his hidden poetry? What if society's gossips piece together their careful charade? Anxiety threads through their correspondence now, adding urgency to every exchange. They begin discussing contingency plans in coded language. Burning becomes a bitter necessity, yet still they write, compelled by love stronger than fear, creating beauty despite the growing shadow of consequence. Their language evolves into something entirely their own, shared references accumulating like pearls on an invisible string. He mentions Beethoven, and she knows he means stormy emotions. She writes of roses, and he understands her reference to hope blooming against odds. Outsiders would find their letters cryptic, meaningless, but every symbol carries weight earned through months of careful correspondence. They become fluent in the dialect of hidden love, speaking volumes through seemingly innocent observations. The texture of different papers tells stories of mood and moment, rough parchment for urgent confessions, smooth vellum for carefully crafted poetry. She experiments with different inks, navy blue for melancholy days, warm brown for contented evenings. He notices every choice, reading meaning into paperweight and pen strokes. Their correspondence becomes an art form, where medium merges with message, each letter a small exhibition showcasing the evolution of two hearts, learning to speak in whispers, loud enough to cross any distance. Late nights become sacred hours devoted to their secret communion. While the city sleeps, they pour themselves onto paper by flickering candlelight. Exhaustion makes them honest. Inhibition dissolves in the small hours when truth feels safer. These midnight letters capture their raw selves, unfiltered by daylight's caution. Dawn finds them surrounded by pages still wet with ink and vulnerability. Morning light reveals confessions they might never speak aloud, but somehow found courage to write in darkness. Their carefully constructed paper paradise teeters on the edge of discovery. Servants gossip about unusual correspondence. Family members notice distracted behavior and ink-stained fingers. The weight of secrecy grows heavier with each passing letter. Yet neither can imagine stopping this flow of written affection. They've created something beautiful and dangerous. A love affair conducted entirely through penmanship and poetry, but whispers gather like storm clouds, threatening to tear apart their fragile epistolary sanctuary. Chapter 6. A Wisp of Scandal, the Threat of Unrequited Love. In Victorian society, few things struck more fear into a young woman's heart than the spectre of scandal. Even the whisper of impropriety could unravel years of careful reputation building. Our heroine had navigated these treacherous waters with grace, but now a storm was brewing on the horizon, one that would test every lesson her mother had taught her about propriety and protection. It began on an ordinary Tuesday morning, the kind where sunlight filtered softly through lace curtains, promising nothing more than tea and embroidery. But fate had other plans, as our heroine descended the mahogany staircase. Her silk slippers barely whispered against the polished wood. She discovered an unexpected caller waiting in the front parlour, someone whose presence would shatter her carefully constructed world of quiet routine and measured propriety. Mr. Pemberton stood awkwardly beside the fireplace mantel, his hat clutched desperately in sweating palms. He was a clerk from her father's business, earnest perhaps, but entirely unsuitable for a woman of her standing. His worn coat spoke of modest means. His nervous fidgeting revealed his awareness of the social chasm between them. Yet here he stood, having somehow convinced the housemaid to announce him. About to commit an act of social suicide, the young woman entered with practised composure, her training serving as armour against this unexpected intrusion. She offered the briefest of curtsies, maintaining the precise distance that propriety demanded. Yet something in Mr. Pemberton's desperate eyes warned her that normal social protocols would not suffice. He had not come for business matters or polite conversation. The air itself seemed to thicken with unspoken intentions and impending catastrophe. Words tumbled from his lips like water through a broken dam, passionate declarations that should never have been spoken aloud in respectable society. He spoke of sleepless nights, of dreams that haunted his modest lodgings, of love that burned despite the impossibility of their circumstances. Each phrase drove another nail into the coffin of propriety, while our heroine stood frozen, watching her peaceful world crumble with every inappropriate syllable. The weight of his confession settled like lead in her chest. She could feel the foundations of her reputation shifting beneath her feet. In that parlour, surrounded by her mother's careful arrangements of roses and respectability, she faced the terrible mathematics of Victorian romance. One inappropriate declaration could destroy years of careful cultivation. One witness could transform private mortification into public scandal. The very air seemed poisoned with possibility. Her mind raced through the potential consequences. Would the housemaid speak of this encounter? Would her mother discover the breach of protocol? Could Mr. Pemberton be trusted to maintain discretion after such an emotional outburst? The shadows in the corner seemed to darken, as if reflecting the storm clouds gathering over her previously serene existence. Every carefully constructed wall of propriety now felt fragile as morning mist. She drew upon every lesson in deportment, every whispered instruction about managing difficult social situations. Her voice emerged steady despite the chaos in her heart, speaking words that felt like shards of glass. Mr. Pemberton, you forget yourself, and you forget my position. The formality felt cruel, but cruelty was sometimes kindness in Victorian society, where harsh truth spoken softly might prevent catastrophic exposure. His face crumpled like paper in rain, the hope that had sustained him through sleepless nights, dissolving into bitter understanding. She watched him absorb the rejection, saw how it settled into his bones like winter cold. Yet even in his pain, she recognized a terrible relief. The impossible dream that had tormented him could finally be laid to rest, though the cost would be measured in heartbreak rather than hope. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, filled with everything that could never be spoken. She felt the weight of her position, the privilege and prison of her social standing. While he represented freedom from expectation, he also embodied the destruction of everything she had been raised to protect. The choice was no choice at all, yet making it felt like tearing away pieces of her own heart. Through the window, she could see her mother's prize roses blooming in perfect rows, a testament to careful cultivation and rigid control. How different her own life seemed from those flowers, constrained by invisible stakes and careful pruning. Yet even roses, when left to grow wild, could become something beautiful and untamed. The thought felt dangerous, like rebellion flowering in her chest. Mr. Pemberton straightened his shoulders, gathering the fragments of his dignity with visible effort. His bow was precise, proper, a final acknowledgement of the boundaries that separated them. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I should not have presumed." The words hung in the air like incense, heavy with regret and resignation. She wanted to comfort him, but comfort itself would be another transgression. As his footsteps faded down the garden path, she remained motionless in the parlour, surrounded by the ghosts of words that should never have been spoken. The room felt different now, somehow smaller, as if the walls had moved closer while accommodating such dangerous emotions. Outside, life continued in its orderly Victorian rhythm, but inside, everything had shifted, subtly, irrevocably, like furniture rearranged in darkness. The aftermath of scandal, even potential scandal, lingered like smoke from a doused fire. She moved through her daily routine with mechanical precision, yet every task felt somehow hollow. The embroidery that once brought peace now seemed pointless. The tea that once comforted now tasted bitter. How many other women, she wondered, had stood where she stood, choosing duty over desire? Days passed in careful normalcy, each one a small victory against the threat of exposure. Yet in quiet moments, when shadows lengthened and propriety relaxed its grip, she found herself wondering about different choices, different lives, different worlds where hearts could speak freely without fear of social suicide. The wondering felt dangerous, but she could no more stop it than stop breathing. This brush with scandal had revealed the true architecture of her world, built not on love or happiness, but on reputation and appearance. She had protected both, but at what cost? The victory felt hollow, leaving her to contemplate the prison of propriety that surrounded every Victorian woman, beautiful and suffocating in equal measure, like roses grown in glass houses, lovely to behold, but forever separated from the wild. Chapter 7. Crossing uncharted frontiers. Boundaries and sacrifices. In the deepening shadows of Victorian propriety, love began to demand its own forbidden territory. Hearts that had learned to whisper now yearned to speak their truth aloud. The careful, measured dance of courtship gave way to something more urgent, more desperately real. Where once there were stolen glances, now there were stolen moments. Where once there were formal visits, now there were secret meetings that defied every social rule. The air itself seemed charged with possibility and danger. Every stolen moment carried the weight of potential scandal. Yet love, once awakened to its own power, refused to be contained by society's rigid boundaries. In drawing rooms and garden paths, hearts began to beat with a rhythm all their own, a rhythm that spoke not of propriety, but of passion, not of duty, but of desire. The very foundations of Victorian romance were beginning to tremble. Letters became lifelines in this new emotional landscape. No longer content with formal exchanges about weather and health, lovers began to pour their souls onto paper, each word carefully chosen, yet burning with feeling. Hidden meanings danced between the lines. A pressed flower spoke volumes. An underlined word carried the weight of a caress. These secret communications became acts of rebellion, small but significant victories against a world determined to keep hearts apart. The risk of discovery only heightened the intensity. Every clandestine meeting was both a gift and a gamble. Lovers learned to read the subtle language of possibility, a nod from across a crowded room, a lingering touch while passing a teacup. These small gestures carried enormous emotional weight. They were breadcrumbs on a path toward something that felt simultaneously inevitable and impossible. Each secret moment was both a step forward and a step into unknown territory. In moonlit gardens and shadowy alcoves, Victorian lovers discovered the intoxicating power of secrecy. Away from watchful eyes and wagging tongues, they could finally breathe freely here. In these stolen spaces, conversation flowed like water after drought. Fears and dreams were shared without the filter of social expectation. These moments of genuine connection felt like small miracles, yet each meeting carried the constant awareness that discovery would mean social ruin for all involved. The emotional toll was immense. Living a double life required constant vigilance. Every public appearance became a performance. every word measured against the risk of revelation. The strain showed in nervous glances, in trembling hands, in the dark circles beneath tired eyes. Yet somehow, the difficulty only made the connection feel more precious. Like rare flowers blooming in impossible conditions, their love grew stronger precisely because it had to fight for survival. Secret codes emerged from necessity. Lovers developed their own language of meaningful glances and subtle gestures. A particular way of holding a fan, a book left open to a certain page, a flower worn in a specific position. These signals became a form of poetry, beautiful in their complexity and dangerous in their meaning. Victorian society, so focused on proper behaviour, remained largely blind to this underground network of romantic communication happening right beneath their noses. The first stolen kiss marked a point of no return. In that moment of forbidden contact, all the careful rules and boundaries dissolved. Hearts that had been kept apart by inches of social propriety suddenly discovered the dangerous territory of physical connection. The sensation was overwhelming, not just the touch itself, but the knowledge that they had crossed an invisible line from which there would be no safe retreat. Everything that followed would carry the memory of that transgression. Family pressures intensified as emotions deepened. Parents and guardians, sensing the dangerous currents beneath polite conversation, tightened their surveillance. Chaperones became more vigilant, social activities more structured. The very forces meant to protect virtue began to feel like prison walls. Lovers found themselves fighting, not just for connection, but for the basic right to feel, to experience the full spectrum of human emotion without shame or fear of punishment. Public spaces became theatres of careful performance, in ballrooms and parlours. Lovers mastered the art of invisible communication. A dance became an opportunity for whispered words. A promenade allowed for precious moments of private conversation. Yet every public interaction carried the constant awareness of watching eyes. Society matrons positioned themselves like sentries, ready to pounce on any sign of impropriety. The very air seemed to crackle with tension and possibility. Sleep became elusive, as hearts wrestled with impossible choices. To continue down this dangerous path meant risking everything. Reputation, family harmony, financial security, yet to turn back, felt like a kind of emotional death. Lovers lay awake in their separate beds, staring at ceilings and wondering if the person they loved was doing the same. The night hours stretched endlessly, filled with both longing and fear of what dawn might bring. Friends became unwilling accomplices, or dangerous obstacles. Some offered help, becoming messengers and lookouts in the service of love. Others, bound by their own social obligations, felt compelled to report suspicious behaviour. Trust became a precious commodity. Every confidence shared carried the risk of betrayal. Lovers learned to navigate a complex web of social relationships, never knowing who might prove ally or enemy in their quest for emotional freedom. The weight of deception grew heavier with each passing day. Maintaining a facade of propriety while harbouring such intense feelings required enormous emotional energy. Every lie told to protect their secret chipped away at their sense of honour. Yet the alternative, complete honesty about their feelings, seemed to promise only scandal and separation. They found themselves trapped between the truth of their hearts and the demands of their world. Seasonal changes marked the passage of their secret courtship. Spring brought opportunities for garden walks and outdoor gatherings. Summer offered longer days and evening entertainments. Autumn's shorter days meant earlier darkness for clandestine meetings. Winter's social season intensified both opportunities and dangers. Each season carried its own rhythms of hope and fear, its own possibilities for connection and risks of discovery. Time itself became both ally and enemy. The question of the future loomed ever larger. These stolen moments, precious as they were, could not continue indefinitely. Society's pressure for resolution grew stronger. Parents began arranging more formal meetings with suitable prospects. The window for choice was closing. Lovers realized they were approaching a crossroads where they would need to choose between safety and love, between the known path of conformity and the unknown territory of following their hearts. As this chapter of their story drew to a close, the stakes had never been higher. They had crossed so many boundaries, taken so many risks, yet the biggest choices still lay ahead. In the shadows of Victorian society, two hearts had discovered the dangerous power of love. But love alone might not be enough to overcome the forces arrayed against them. The next chapter would demand not just feeling, but courage, not just passion, but sacrifice. Chapter 8. The Dance of Deception. Society's masquerade balls. The grand ballroom shimmers with 1,000 candles, their golden light dancing across silk gowns and polished floors. Beneath the glittering chandeliers, Victorian society performs its most elaborate charade, here behind painted fans and practiced smiles. Hearts learn the delicate art of concealment. Every gesture carries meaning, every glance a secret message. The orchestra begins its haunting waltz. Tonight's gathering represents the pinnacle of Victorian social theatre. Ladies in their finest ball gowns sweep across marble floors, their movements choreographed by decades of etiquette lessons. Gentlemen in black tailcoats navigate the intricate rules of proper conduct. Yet beneath this polished veneer, forbidden desires simmer. The ballroom becomes a stage where love must wear a mask, where passion speaks only through the language of approved social rituals. Our protagonists enter this glittering maze of propriety and pretense. She, radiant in emerald silk, her fan concealing the rapid flutter of her heart. He, distinguished in formal attire, his practiced composure betraying nothing of the storm within. Across the crowded room, their eyes meet for the briefest moment. In that fleeting glance lies a world of unspoken longing, carefully hidden beneath society's watchful gaze. The dance card system governs every interaction, each waltz, each quadrille carefully orchestrated by social convention. Mothers watch their daughters with hawk-like vigilance, while chaperones position themselves strategically throughout the ballroom. Every conversation must remain within proper bounds, every touch sanctioned by tradition. Yet somehow, in this world of rigid rules, love finds its secret pathways, speaking through coded gestures and meaningful pauses. As the evening's first waltz begins, couples take their positions on the polished floor. The three-quarter time signature creates an intoxicating rhythm, allowing for the closest physical contact Victorian society permits. Our lovers move with practiced grace, their bodies maintaining proper distance while their hearts yearn to close the gap. Each turn, each dip becomes a moment of stolen intimacy within the confines of acceptable behavior. The language of the fan speaks volumes in this world of silent communication. A fan resting on the right cheek means yes, while touching the left ear signals a desire to be rid of unwanted company. Our heroine masters these subtle codes, using her ivory fan to send messages across the crowded ballroom. Meanwhile, the positioning of gloves, the angle of a handkerchief, all carry significance in this elaborate system of veiled expression. Between dances, they steal moments in the conservatory, where exotic plants provide blessed privacy from prying eyes. Here, surrounded by orchids and climbing roses, whispered conversations become possible. Yet even in this sanctuary, propriety demands its due. They speak in metaphors, their words carefully chosen, each sentence a delicate balance between truth and discretion, love expressed through the beauty of unfinished thoughts. The supper dance arrives, bringing with it the rare privilege of extended conversation, seated at small tables draped in fine linen. Couples can engage in more intimate discourse. Our protagonists find themselves positioned where stolen glances become possible. Over delicate courses of syllabub and champagne, they navigate the treacherous waters of proper courtship. Every word weighed, every gesture considered for its potential interpretation by watching society. The cotillion demands precise coordination between partners, its intricate steps requiring trust and synchronization as they move through the elaborate figures, hands touching briefly at prescribed moments. Their connection deepens, the dance becomes a metaphor for their courtship, bound by rules, yet yearning for freedom. Each pattern brings them together, only to separate them again, mirroring the push and pull of Victorian romance. Gossip flows like wine throughout the evening, carried on whispered conversations behind painted fans. Reputations rise and fall with each rumoured indiscretion. Our lovers navigate this dangerous social current with careful precision. A glance held too long, a smile too warm, and tongues begin to wag. They learn to love in shadows, their affection expressed through the smallest gestures that only they can interpret. The evening's entertainment includes musical performances where talented young ladies display their accomplishments. Our heroine takes her turn at the pianoforte, her fingers dancing across ivory keys while her heart performs its own complex melody. Through Chopin's Nocturne, she speaks the words society forbids. Her beloved understands each nuanced phrase, recognizing the emotion woven through the delicate harmonies of her chosen piece. As midnight approaches, the ball reaches its crescendo. Couples whirl through the final waltz, their movements growing more desperate as the evening draws to a close. For our protagonists, each remaining moment becomes precious. They dance with practiced propriety, while their hearts race with unspoken urgency. The music slows, signalling the evening's end, and with it the return to society's stricter daily constraints. In the ballroom's fading candlelight, they share one last meaningful exchange, a pressed flower slipped discreetly into her glove, a poem folded inside his dance card. These small tokens become treasured secrets, physical reminders of emotions that dare not speak their name. The evening's magic must soon surrender to daylight's harsh reality, but these hidden symbols will sustain them through the lonely days ahead. The carriages arrive to collect the evening's revellers, their lanterns cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. Our lovers part with formal propriety, their farewell observed by countless watching eyes. Yet in that brief moment when he assists her into her carriage, their fingers touch for an instant longer than propriety allows. It's a tiny rebellion against society's constraints, a silent promise of enduring affection despite the odds. Alone in their separate chambers, they remove the evening's costumes and facades. She carefully preserves the pressed flower in her private diary, while he reads her hidden message by candlelight. The ball's glittering deception fades, leaving only the raw truth of their connection. In this quiet hour before dawn, they understand that their love, though forced into hiding, burns brighter than any ballroom's artificial light. The morning sun rises on a world unchanged by the night's secret dramas. Victorian society continues its elaborate dance of pretense and propriety, yet our protagonists carry within them a deeper understanding. They've learned that true love can flourish even within the most restrictive circumstances. Their bittersweet evening proves that the human heart, like the most beautiful waltz, finds its rhythm despite the limitations imposed upon it. Chapter 9. Bound by Fate. The inevitable proposal. In the Victorian drawing room, Fate arrives wearing a gentleman's waistcoat and carrying society's expectations. The moment our heroine has dreaded approaches like storm clouds gathering on a summer's day. Her heart pounds against her corset, not with love's sweet anticipation, but with the weight of duty pressing down. Here, where parlour games end and life's harsh realities begin, a proposal awaits that will change everything forever. The suitable gentleman clears his throat, adjusting his pocket watch with practiced precision. His intentions have been whispered through drawing rooms for weeks, analysed by mothers and approved by fathers. Our heroine sits perfectly still, her hands folded like prayer, knowing this moment will seal her fate. The afternoon light filters through lace curtains, casting shadows that seem to whisper of dreams about to be buried beneath propriety's heavy hand. His words come measured and proper, rehearsed in front of mirrors and refined through social protocol. Miss Charlotte, I have spoken with your father. The phrase hangs in the air like incense, ceremonial and suffocating. She listens to her future being arranged in careful sentences, each word a link in chains forged by respectability. Her true love remains unspoken, a secret burning bright behind eyes trained to show only mild interest and maiden modesty. The proposal unfolds like a business transaction wrapped in romantic rhetoric. He speaks of comfortable circumstances, mutual respect, and the advantages of their union. His voice carries no tremor of passion, no catch of overwhelming emotion, just steady, reasonable words that promise security over sensation. Charlotte's heart rebels silently against this mathematics of marriage, where compatibility is calculated and love's wild variables are carefully excluded from the equation of suitable partnership. She finds herself nodding at appropriate intervals, her training overriding her heart's desperate protests. "How thoughtful," she murmurs. "How considerate of you to speak with Papa first." The words taste of ash and duty. Outside the window, sparrows sing freely in the garden, their songs a mocking contrast to the careful choreography of this moment. Freedom seems so close, yet impossibly distant, like stars glimpsed through prison bars. The gentleman produces a ring, not a symbol of wild romantic devotion, but a sensible family heirloom with respectable stones and solid gold. It catches the afternoon light with cold fire, beautiful, yet somehow lifeless. Charlotte stares at this circle of metal that will bind her to a life half-lived. She thinks of other hands this ring has worn, other women who accepted duty over desire, other dreams buried beneath the weight of social expectation. As he slides the ring onto her finger, Charlotte feels the metal's coolness against her skin, like winter arriving early. The fit is perfect. Of course it is, measured secretly by her mother, weeks ago when all still pretended this was romance rather than arrangement. The engagement ring sits heavy on her hand, a golden shackle disguised as jewelry. She forces a smile that feels like breaking glass, sharp and dangerous to maintain. The parlour door opens, and family members stream in, their faces bright with manufactured joy. Congratulations flow like champagne at a wake, bubbling and bitter. Her mother's eyes shine with relief rather than happiness. Her father nods approvingly from his chair. Another successful negotiation concluded. Charlotte becomes the centre of attention she never wanted, praised for accepting a future that feels like slowly drowning in respectability's shallow waters. The congratulatory chorus begins. "What wonderful news, and such a perfect match," echo through the room like church bells announcing a funeral. Hands pat her shoulders, voices murmur approval, and all the while Charlotte feels herself disappearing beneath layers of other people's satisfaction. She smiles and thanks them, playing her role perfectly, while her heart screams silently against the performance of joy she cannot truly feel. Through the polite chaos of celebration, Charlotte's eyes search desperately for one face, and there he stands in the doorway, her secret beloved, drawn by the commotion. Their gazes meet across the crowded room like two souls, recognizing each other through prison bars. His face goes pale as understanding strikes. The woman he loves, the heart he thought might one day be his, now officially belongs to another. Time freezes in that moment of locked eyes. All the congratulations fade to whispers. All the movement blurs to stillness. In his face, she sees her own anguish reflected, her own desperate rebellion against fate's cruel timing. He takes a step forward, then stops, remembering his place, remembering the rules that govern their world. Love must bow before duty. Passion must yield to propriety's iron fist. He forces himself to approach, to offer congratulations like any proper gentleman. His voice sounds hollow, carved out and emptied of all warmth. "I wish you every happiness," he manages, the words costing him everything. Charlotte's heart breaks at the formal distance in his tone, the careful space he maintains, the way he looks just past her eyes, rather than into them. Civility becomes their shared torture. The newly engaged couple stands together for photographs and well wishes, but Charlotte feels utterly alone. Her fiancé speaks of wedding plans and future arrangements, his words flowing over her like cold water. All the while, her true love lingers at the room's edge, a shadow of what might have been. She nods and smiles, playing bride-to-be, while her soul mourns for love lost before it could fully bloom. As the evening draws on, guests begin to depart with final congratulations and promises to call soon. Charlotte's beloved prepares to leave, to walk away from this parlour and perhaps from her life forever. Their eyes meet one final time. In that look passes everything they cannot say, a lifetime of what if, compressed into a single aching moment of understanding and loss. His eyes speak what his lips cannot. Wait for me, they seem to plead. Have faith that love will find a way. Her answering gaze whispers back with desperate hope. I will try, I will hope, I will remember this feeling, even as I walk toward a loveless altar. The silent conversation between souls hangs in the air like incense, sacred and forbidden. As the door closes behind him, Charlotte touches the ring that now binds her to duty rather than desire. The parlour feels empty despite her family's continued celebration. She carries within her heart one perfect, terrible secret, the memory of love acknowledged in silence, of two hearts beating in desperate unison against fate's cruel decree. Tomorrow will bring wedding plans, but tonight belongs to dreams of what love might have been. Chapter 10. In Lover's Shadow. Silent Trials and Tribulations. The proposal hangs in the air like morning mist, beautiful yet ephemeral, neither acknowledged nor dismissed. It creates ripples that disturb the careful surface of Victorian propriety. Our lovers find themselves caught between what their hearts whisper and what society demands. The aftermath proves more treacherous than the confession itself, as every glance now carries weight. Every silence speaks volumes in this delicate dance of restraint. In drawing rooms across London, the art of maintaining composure becomes a masterclass in suffering. She practices her needlework with trembling fingers, each stitch a meditation against the chaos within. He retreats to his study, pretending to read while the same page blurs before his eyes. For hours, their families notice nothing amiss, or perhaps they notice everything and choose the comfort of willful blindness. Victorian society thrives on such carefully orchestrated deceptions. The weight of unspoken words grows heavier with each passing day. At breakfast, they exchange pleasantries about the weather, while their hearts thunder like approaching storms. She passes the marmalade with steady hands, though her pulse races at the briefest contact of their fingers. He discusses the morning papers, as if political matters could distract him from the memory of her face when he spoke those forbidden words. Decorum becomes their prison and their salvation. Victorian emotion had rules as rigid as corset stays. Feelings were to be channeled through proper avenues. Charitable works for melancholy, walks in the garden for contemplation, prayer for everything else. But what rules applied to love that bloomed in forbidden gardens? What etiquette governed hearts that beat for the wrong person? They search through conduct books and find no guidance for their particular torment. Society offers no roadmap for navigating these uncharted territories of the heart. The consequences of impropriety loom like thunderclouds on a summer afternoon. Whispers travel faster than carriages in polite society, and even the suggestion of scandal could destroy reputations built over generations. She knows this, he knows this, yet knowledge offers little comfort. When every fibre of their beings yearns to abandon caution, they become students of restraint, learning new ways to suffer gracefully while maintaining the facade that everything remains perfectly, acceptably, normal. Their stolen glances become a language unto themselves. Across crowded ballrooms, they communicate in the flutter of a fan, the adjustment of a glove, The pause before accepting a dance card. These micro gestures carry the weight of sonnets. A raised eyebrow speaks volumes about longing. A turned shoulder whispers of frustration. They develop an intimacy built entirely on restraint, finding profound connection in the spaces between what they cannot say. Sleep becomes elusive for both. She lies awake counting the roses on her wallpaper, each bloom a reminder of the garden, where words were spoken that cannot be unheard. He paces his chambers, wearing thin the Persian carpet his grandfather brought back from distant travels. Dawn finds them both hollow-eyed, yet determined to face another day of careful pretense. Exhaustion becomes their constant companion, as draining as any physical labour. The household staff begin to notice. Servants always do. They whisper in the kitchen about the young master's poor appetite, the lady's tendency to stare out windows for hours. Mrs. Patterson, the housekeeper, clucks her tongue knowingly, but keeps her observations to herself. Proper servants understand that some knowledge is better left unspoken, yet their concerned glances add another layer of pressure to an already unbearable situation. Letters become instruments of torture. Every correspondence requires careful examination. Is this merely friendly communication, or something deeper? They parse each word like scholars studying ancient texts, searching for hidden meanings in discussions of weather and social calls. Even the most innocent exchange feels dangerous, loaded with potential for misinterpretation. The simple act of writing a thank you note becomes an exercise in emotional archaeology. Public gatherings transform into theatrical performances. At the Pemberton soiree, they execute a careful choreography of appropriate distance, neither too close nor conspicuously apart. They laugh at others' jokes while dying inside, make polite conversation while their hearts scream, dance with suitable partners while wishing they could waltz away from this suffocating world of expectations. Every social event becomes a test of their resolve. The physical toll manifests in subtle ways. Her complexion grows pale, despite the rouge she carefully applies. His clothes hang looser as appetite abandons him. They move through their days like beautiful ghosts, present in body but absent in spirit. Family physicians are consulted, tonics are prescribed, but no medicine can cure the particular malady that afflicts hearts caught between desire and duty. Victorian medicine has no remedy for forbidden love. Small rebellions begin to surface. She lingers too long in the conservatory, where he might pass. He finds excuses to walk by her favourite reading nook. These tiny acts of defiance feel monumentally dangerous in their restricted world. Each transgression against propriety sends thrills of terror and excitement through their weary souls. They become addicted to these moments of risk, these glimpses of what life might be if society's chains were broken. The edge of scandal draws closer like fog rolling in from the Thames. Mrs. Worthington mentions at tea that certain young people seem rather distracted lately. Lady Pemberton raises an eyebrow at what she perceives as excessive interest in botanical matters. These seemingly innocent observations carry the weight of social doom. Reputations have been destroyed on far less evidence. The spectre of public shame begins to haunt their already troubled nights. Desperation breeds dangerous thoughts. Perhaps they could leave London, start fresh in the colonies where society's grip loosens, or maybe a convenient accident could free them from their current circumstances. These fantasies dance through their minds during church sermons and dinner parties, wild dreams of escape that feel both impossible and inevitable. The pressure builds like steam in a kettle, threatening to explode if not somehow released. The chapter draws to a close with storm clouds gathering both literally and figuratively. Rain beats against the windows as if nature itself weeps for their plight. Inside, the drawing room feels smaller each day, the walls closing in like a genteel prison. They sit in the same room, yet might as well be separated by oceans. The distance between proper behaviour and heart's desire has never felt more insurmountable or more tempting to cross. As we leave our star-crossed lovers in this state of beautiful agony, we're reminded that Victorian romance was not for the faint of heart. It required strength, cunning, and an almost superhuman capacity for suffering. Their story teeters on the precipice now, ready to tumble into scandal or somehow find redemption. Next time, we'll discover whether love can truly conquer the ironclad expectations of 19th century society. Until then, rest gently in these shadows of the past. Chapter 11. Etiquette Unravelled. A Lover's Rebellion. The walls of propriety had grown too high, too suffocating. Our lovers found themselves pressed against invisible barriers that society had built around their hearts. Their correspondence, once timid and careful, began to transform, like flowers pushing through concrete. Their words sought freedom. The gentle rebellion had begun, quietly at first, then with growing desperation. Boundaries that once seemed sacred now felt like chains to be broken. Love demanded its voice. In drawing rooms across Victorian England, young hearts yearned behind painted fans and practiced smiles. But for our couple, the performance had become unbearable. Their letters, delivered through trusted servants, carried more than ink upon paper. They carried rebellion, each word carefully chosen, not just for love, but for defiance. The language of flowers gave way to something more direct, more dangerous. Their pens trembled, not from nervousness, but from the weight of unspoken truths, finally finding expression. The first letter of rebellion arrived on a Tuesday morning, hidden beneath pressed violets. Her words burned with newfound courage. "I grow weary of these games," she wrote, "of speaking in riddles when my heart screams plainly." The pale lavender paper seemed to pulse with her frustration. Her usually perfect penmanship showed signs of haste, of passion barely contained. Each sentence pushed further beyond the boundaries of acceptable correspondence. Love was learning to roar rather than whisper. His response came swiftly. Penned in the dark hours before dawn, "Your boldness sets my soul aflame," he confessed. Gone were the careful metaphors about weather and seasons. Instead, he wrote of longing that kept him pacing his study until sunrise, of dreams where propriety held no power. The cream-coloured stationery bore witness to his rebellion. Ink blots marked places where emotion overcame precision. Their secret language was evolving into something society would never understand or approve. With each exchange, their words grew bolder, more desperate. She wrote of suffocating dinner parties, where she smiled while dying inside, of nights spent imagining a world where love needed no chaperones. Her letters began arriving on rose-tinted paper, as if the very medium rebelled against convention. The delicate pink seemed to fade with each passionate word, as though her emotions were draining colour from propriety itself. Beauty and rebellion intertwined in every carefully crafted sentence. He matched her intensity with his own confessions, writing of boardroom meetings where he could think only of her laugh, of society functions that felt like elaborate prisons. His usually controlled hand grew wild across pale yellow pages. The gentle colour seemed to mock the fire of his words. "I would burn every etiquette book in England," he wrote, "if it meant one honest conversation with you." Their rebellion was becoming a confession, a declaration of war against the world that kept them apart. The correspondence began arriving daily, then twice daily. Servants whispered of the unusual frequency. Though they dared not read the contents, each letter pushed further into forbidden territory. She wrote of wanting to meet him alone, without the suffocating presence of her mother's watchful eyes. The mint-green paper trembled in his hands as he read. Her words painted pictures of clandestine meetings in moonlit gardens, of conversations that would scandalize proper society. Rebellion was becoming reckless, dangerous, intoxicating. Their letters began to blur the line between propriety and passion. She described dreams where they walked together without the prescribed 3-foot distance, where they could touch hands without gloves as barriers. The baby blue stationery seemed to pale further with each confession, colours fading like the constraints they were abandoning. He responded with equal fervour, writing of a future where love mattered more than lineage, where hearts chose their own paths. Their rebellion was painting itself in increasingly desperate hues. The weight of their secret rebellion pressed against them both. She found herself distracted during piano lessons, her fingers stumbling over keys as her mind wandered to his latest letter. Hidden beneath her music sheets, the powder pink paper seemed to glow with possibility. Meanwhile, he struggled through business meetings, his attention drifting to the soft lavender envelope tucked in his jacket pocket. Their love was becoming harder to hide, more dangerous to contain. Society's rules felt increasingly fragile. Desperation crept into their correspondence like shadows at dusk. She wrote of feeling trapped in amber, beautiful but lifeless, preserved in propriety. While her soul withered, the peach-coloured paper bore testament to her anguish, each word carved deeper into forbidden territory. He replied with matching intensity, confessing that he'd considered abandoning his inheritance, his position, everything that society deemed important. If only they could be together without shame. Their rebellion was reaching a crescendo. Their words began to dance on the very edge of scandal. She wrote sentences that would make her governess faint, descriptions of how she imagined his embrace, how she longed to feel his breath against her cheek, without the barrier of chaperoned conversation. The pale yellow paper seemed to blush at her boldness. He responded in kind, his usually measured prose becoming poetry of rebellion, each letter a step further from the safety of social acceptance, closer to the precipice of ruin. The servants began to notice the change. Her lady's maid observed the flush in her cheeks. After each letter's arrival, the way she pressed the fading pastel pages to her heart. His valet remarked on the master's distracted state, how he wrote furiously by candlelight. The very air around them seemed charged with secret rebellion. Their love affair, conducted entirely through ink and paper, was becoming more real than the supervised visits allowed by society, more honest than any chaperoned conversation. But rebellion carried risks they had not fully considered. Her mother began asking pointed questions about the frequency of correspondence, about the flush of excitement that accompanied each delivery. The coral-tinted stationery lay hidden beneath innocuous letters from distant cousins, lies built upon lies. Meanwhile, his father questioned the distraction, the late nights, the way his son's attention wandered during important discussions. Their secret world was pressing against the boundaries of the real one, threatening to spill over. The inevitable approached like storm clouds gathering on a summer horizon. She had grown careless in her passion, leaving a letter half-finished on her writing desk, the apricot paper scattered with words that would destroy her reputation. Meanwhile, he paced his study, sensing that their rebellion had reached its limits, that society would soon demand its pound of flesh for their audacity. The fading colours of their correspondence seemed prophetic now, beauty slowly drained away by the weight of convention. The discovery came on a Thursday afternoon. Her younger sister, sent to retrieve a forgotten handkerchief, found the letter, the blush-pink paper, covered with words that no proper young lady should write, or even know, sentences that spoke of yearning, of physical touch, of rebellious dreams. The child's eyes widened with confusion and excitement. She clutched the forbidden correspondence, understanding instinctively that she held something powerful, something that could change everything. The rebellion was about to be exposed. As footsteps approached the drawing room where Mother was taking tea, the letter trembled in small hands. The faded pink paper seemed to pulse with the weight of scandal. Our lover's rebellion, carried out in secret for months, was about to face judgment. The careful words they had crafted in darkness would soon be scrutinized in harsh daylight. Their love story, written in increasingly desperate pastels, was approaching its moment of truth. the confrontation they had both feared and perhaps secretly welcomed. Chapter 12. Under Society's Gaze. A terrible revelation. The golden afternoon light filters through drawing-room windows, casting long shadows across polished mahogany, but beneath this peaceful veneer, something dangerous stirs. A single piece of paper, forgotten in haste, lies waiting, innocent in appearance, yet devastating in consequence, for in Victorian society, even the smallest indiscretion could ignite a firestorm of scandal, and today, that storm approaches. The letter rests upon a writing desk, its ivory paper catching the light, penned in passionate haste during stolen moments of tenderness, words that should never have been written, feelings that should never have been confessed. In an era where propriety reigned supreme, such expressions of the heart were dangerous, forbidden, and now, through cruel fortune, these intimate whispers lie exposed, waiting for discovery by the wrong eyes. A servant's footsteps echo in the hallway, dusting, tidying, performing the endless tasks that keep Victorian households pristine. But today, routine becomes catastrophe. A delicate hand reaches for the letter, curious eyes scan its contents, and in that moment everything changes. The carefully constructed walls of propriety begin to crumble as private passion transforms into public shame. The servant's gasp echoes through the silence like thunder. Word spreads like wildfire through the servants' quarters, hushed whispers in candlelit corridors, knowing glances exchanged over morning tea. The letter's contents, once sacred and secret, now become currency in the underground economy of gossip. Each retelling adds embellishment. Each whisper grows bolder, and slowly, inevitably, the scandal rises from below stairs to the drawing rooms above, where reputations hang by threads. In the morning room, ladies gather for their ritual of tea and conversation, their voices initially soft, discussing weather and social calls, but then the whispers begin. Fragments of forbidden words, hints of improper conduct, fans flutter nervously, teacups tremble in uncertain hands, eyes dart with speculation and judgment. For in this world of appearances, reputation is everything, and once tainted, it may never recover its former purity. The accused lovers remain blissfully unaware of the storm gathering around them, sharing stolen glances across crowded parlours, finding comfort in each other's presence, their hearts still warm with the memory of written confessions. But society's eyes are everywhere now, watching, judging, condemning. Every innocent touch becomes evidence of guilt. Every shared smile a confirmation of scandal. The net of accusation tightens around them, invisible yet inescapable. A mother's stern voice cuts through afternoon silence, summoning her daughter to account for whispered accusations. The young woman's face pales as reality crashes down, her private world of love letters and secret meetings suddenly exposed to harsh judgment. Tears glisten unshed as questions rain down like stones. Denial becomes impossible when confronted with evidence, and the weight of societal expectations crushes down upon tender shoulders. The gentleman receives his summons in the form of a cold, formal note, requesting his immediate presence at the family estate. His hands shake as he reads the terse words, knowing instinctively that discovery has come at last. The passionate declarations he penned in moments of weakness now stand as testimony against him. His honour, his future, his very place in society hangs in the balance, awaiting judgment. In the study, stern patriarchs deliberate the scandal's implications, their voices heavy with disappointment and concern for family reputation. Cigars burn unnoticed in crystal ashtrays as weighty decisions are made. Marriage prospects crumble, social invitations withdraw, business partnerships waver. The ripple effects of forbidden love spread far beyond the lovers themselves, touching parents, siblings, entire family lines with the stain of impropriety. Society's verdict arrives swiftly and without mercy. Invitations cease, calling cards remain unacknowledged. Former friends avert their eyes in public. The lovers find themselves isolated in a world that once embraced them. Their passionate correspondence, meant to bridge the gap between hearts, instead creates a chasm between themselves and society. Love becomes exile, connection becomes separation. Intimacy transforms into profound loneliness. The young woman sits by her window, watching carriages pass without stopping. Her fingers trace patterns on fogged glass as tears fall silently. The letter that once brought such joy now haunts her every thought. She remembers penning each word, feeling each emotion, yet now those same sentiments have become weapons against her, turning love into shame, transforming tenderness into torment, leaving her heart fractured and bleeding. Across town, her beloved walks empty streets, his former haunts now unwelcoming, his friends suddenly absent. The weight of scandal presses down like a physical burden. He clutches the memory of their correspondence, those precious words that bridged their separate worlds, but reality intrudes harsh and unforgiving. Their private language of love has become public evidence of disgrace, leaving him adrift in a sea of condemnation. Families convene in emergency council, their voices strained with urgency and fear. Reputations must be salvaged, damage controlled, appearances maintained. Lawyers are consulted, arrangements discussed, futures decided without consulting those most affected. The lovers become pawns in a larger game of social chess, their hearts secondary to family honour, their happiness sacrificed upon the altar of propriety and public perception. As evening shadows lengthen, desperate plans take shape. Perhaps exile to distant cousins. Maybe a hasty marriage to someone suitable. The machinery of Victorian damage control grinds into motion. But through it all, the forbidden correspondence remains, those passionate words that started everything, now standing as silent testimony to love's power and love's devastating cost in a world that demands conformity above all. Night falls heavy with uncertainty. The lovers lie awake in separate beds, separated by more than distance now. Their shared secret has become a public shame, their private joy transformed into collective sorrow. Yet somewhere in the darkness, hope flickers like a candle flame. For love, once awakened, refuses to be easily extinguished, even when the world conspires against its very existence. And so we leave our lovers poised on the precipice between despair and hope. Their correspondence discovered, their secret revealed, their futures uncertain. Victorian society has spoken its harsh judgment, yet the human heart remains defiant. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, difficult choices, and perhaps, just perhaps, a path forward through the thorns of scandal towards something resembling happiness. Love endures, even in the darkest hours. Chapter 13. Crisis and Courage. Fighting for love. The gentle facade of Victorian society begins to crack, revealing the desperate hearts beating beneath layers of propriety and pretense. As our lovers face their darkest hour, the weight of expectation presses down like storm clouds gathering overhead. Whispers of scandal drift through drawing rooms, while behind closed doors, two souls prepare to risk everything they have ever known for the chance to claim their love. The crisis arrives with morning tea and hushed conversations. Servants exchange knowing glances as letters arrive bearing unwelcome news. Families gather in parlours, their voices sharp with concern and disappointment. Reputations hang in the balance, like delicate china, ready to shatter at the slightest misstep. Yet amid this chaos, something beautiful emerges, the quiet determination of hearts that refuse to surrender to the crushing weight of society's expectations and cruel judgments. Desperation blooms like wildflowers in abandoned gardens. Our protagonists find themselves cornered by circumstances beyond their control, their carefully constructed worlds beginning to crumble. Yet in this moment of apparent defeat, something remarkable happens. They discover reserves of strength they never knew existed. Love transforms from gentle whisper to roaring flame, burning away the fears and doubts that once held them captive to others' expectations and societal pressures. The choice arrives stark and undeniable: conform to society's demands, or follow the truth written in their hearts. Standing at this crossroads, they feel the weight of generations pressing down, ancestors who sacrificed their dreams for duty, parents who chose security over passion. Yet something within them rebels against this inherited surrender. They choose love over approval, authenticity over acceptance, their combined courage beginning to illuminate pathways previously hidden in shadow. Time becomes their enemy, as rumours spread like wildfire through London's social circles. Each passing hour brings new challenges, new obstacles, designed to separate what society deems unsuitable. They move through their days with purpose now, no longer hiding their feelings behind careful masks. Every stolen glance carries the weight of rebellion. Every touch defies centuries of rigid convention. Racing against the closing walls of propriety, they gather what courage they can. The scandal breaks like thunder across the peaceful Victorian landscape. Drawing rooms buzz with shocked whispers, fans flutter with nervous energy, and proper ladies clutch their pearls in dismay. Yet our lovers stand firm in the eye of this social storm. Their combined courage creates a small sanctuary where truth can flourish. Together, they weather the disapproving stares and cutting remarks, their bond growing stronger with each challenge that society throws their way. Their courage sparks something unexpected, a flicker of hope that dances against the darkness of convention. Others begin to notice, to question, to wonder if perhaps there might be another way to live and love. Servants whisper encouragement, younger relatives watch with admiration, and even some elders begin to remember their own forgotten dreams. This small rebellion becomes a beacon, showing that love need not always bow to the altar of social expectation and rigid propriety. Victorian propriety stands like a fortress wall, seemingly impenetrable and eternal, yet cracks begin to appear where their love presses against its foundations. Each act of defiance, small though it may seem, creates ripples that spread outward. A refused engagement here, a public declaration there. Their challenge to the established order becomes a quiet revolution, inspiring others to question the price they pay for social acceptance and conventional respectability. The climax builds like a symphony, reaching its crescendo. Every element of their struggle comes together in this pivotal moment: family pressure, social expectations, personal desires, and the weight of an entire era's rigid conventions. The atmosphere grows thick with anticipation, as if the very air holds its breath. In drawing rooms and ballrooms, people lean forward, sensing that something momentous is about to unfold, something that might change everything they thought they knew. The atmosphere thickens like morning fog over the Thames. Uncertainty permeates every corner of their world, making simple decisions feel monumental. Servants tread carefully through hallways, afraid to disturb the delicate balance of a household in crisis. Guests decline invitations, sensing the tension that radiates from within these walls. Yet within this suffocating environment, our lovers find clarity. Their path forward becomes illuminated by the very pressure that seeks to crush their spirits. Tension fills each room like an invisible presence. You can feel it in the way conversations halt when certain names are mentioned, in the careful distance maintained between former friends. Even the portraits on the walls seem to watch with disapproving eyes, their painted faces reflecting the weight of ancestral expectation. Yet amid this suffocating atmosphere, love continues to bloom, quiet, persistent, refusing to be extinguished by the cold winds of social disapproval and family shame. Each pastel stroke of their story reveals deeper truths about the human heart. Gentle colours blend and merge, creating shades that speak of complexity beyond simple black and white moral judgments. The soft hues capture not just their love, but the delicate courage required to pursue it. Brush strokes of hope intermingle with shadows of doubt, creating a masterpiece that celebrates both the beauty and the bravery of those who dare to love against all odds. As the chapter reaches its peak, the fundamental question emerges with crystal clarity. Will they forever remain prisoners of their time, trapped by circumstances they never chose? Or will they find the strength to break free from the golden cages that society has built around them? The answer hangs in the balance. Trembling like a butterfly on the edge of flight, their decision will ripple through generations, inspiring future lovers to question what they accept as unchangeable. The weight of their era presses down like heavy velvet curtains. Beautiful but suffocating generations of tradition demand conformity, sacrifice, the surrender of personal happiness for social harmony, yet something within them refuses to submit. They stand at the threshold between past and future, between acceptance and rebellion. Their choice will determine not just their own fate, but perhaps light a candle for others lost in the darkness of societal expectation. Will they dare to defy everything they have been taught to revere? The question echoes through gilded halls and hushed drawing rooms. Their families wait, society watches, and history itself seems to pause. This is the moment when ordinary people become extraordinary, when love transforms from pleasant sentiment into revolutionary act. The courage to choose authenticity over approval, passion over propriety, to write their own story rather than accept the script others have written for them. As chapter 13 draws to its close, the question lingers in the perfumed air of Victorian drawing rooms. Have our lovers found the strength to transcend their time? Or will they remain beautiful casualties of an unforgiving era? The answer waits just beyond the next heartbeat, the next breath. Their story continues to unfold like delicate origami, each fold revealing new possibilities. We leave them here, poised on the brink of transformation, ready to discover what courage can achieve. Chapter 14, The Final Waltz, a dance of freedom. The gaslight flickers against rain-streaked windows, as two hearts prepare for their most daring gamble, escape from the suffocating embrace of Victorian propriety. Their love has endured, whispered disapproval, chaperoned meetings, and society's relentless judgment. Tonight, beneath the crystal chandeliers of the season's grandest ball, they will dance one last waltz, a silent farewell to the world that never understood their hearts. The plan has been months in the making. Carefully crafted letters disguised as innocent correspondence, savings hidden away in books and jewelry boxes, passage booked on a ship bound for distant shores where no one knows their names, where love need not hide behind fans and formal introductions. Their hands tremble not with fear, but with the intoxicating possibility of freedom. Tonight marks the beginning of their new life together, or their final goodbye. The ballroom gleams in pastel splendor, soft pinks and lavenders adorning the walls like watercolor dreams. Ladies in flowing gowns drift across polished marble floors, while gentlemen in dark tailcoats bow with practiced precision. The orchestra tunes their instruments as conversations buzz with the familiar rhythm of gossip and social positioning. Yet amid this sea of Victorian propriety, two souls prepare to bid farewell to everything they have ever known. She enters wearing ivory silk that catches the light like moonbeams, her gloved hands clutching a small beaded purse containing their train tickets and what little money they could gather. Her eyes search the crowd until they find his familiar face across the room. He stands near the refreshment table, his dark coat impeccable, his expression carefully neutral, but she sees the slight tremor in his fingers, the way his breath quickens when their eyes meet. The evening unfolds with agonizing slowness. Each dance, each curtsy, each polite conversation feels like theatre. They move through the familiar choreography of high society, while their hearts race with anticipation. She dances with her father's business partners. He makes conversation with debutantes and their watchful mothers. All the while, the clock on the mantel ticks toward midnight, toward the moment when they must choose between duty and love. The whispers begin, as they always do, behind painted fans and over champagne glasses, speculation about matches and marriages, fortunes and scandals, the same voices that have shaped their lives with invisible chains of expectation. Tonight, these whispers feel different, distant, like echoes from a world they are already leaving behind. Their secret burns bright between them, a shared knowledge that makes everything else fade to background noise and shadow. When the orchestra announces the evening's final waltz, their moment has arrived. He approaches with the same formal bow he has practiced 1,000 times. She curtsies as propriety demands, but when he offers his hand, their fingers touch with electric recognition. They step onto the dance floor as the music begins, slow, haunting, beautiful, the melody that will forever remind them of this night, this choice, this leap into an uncertain but hopeful future. They move together as one, their bodies remembering the rhythm, despite the months of forced separation around them. Other couples sway to the music, lost in their own worlds of courtship and convention, but she and he dance with the weight of goodbye in every step. Their eyes speak volumes that their lips cannot. Promises of love, fears of discovery, hope for tomorrow. The waltz becomes their silent rebellion against a world that demands their hearts remain separate. Her hand rests lightly on his shoulder, his palm warm against the small of her back. They maintain the proper distance that society dictates. Yet every fibre of their being strains to draw closer. The music swells and the other dancers blur into pastel shadows. For these precious minutes, they exist in a world of their own creation, where love is not a scandal, but a celebration, where touch is not forbidden, but treasured. As they turn and sway, memories flash between them, like shared dreams, stolen glances across crowded parlours, letters hidden in poetry books, brief encounters in garden mazes, while chaperones looked away. Every moment of their courtship has led to this final dance, before they break free from society's constraints. The weight of their decision settles over them like a cloak, heavy with consequence, yet light with possibility and newfound courage. The chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the dancing couples. The air grows thick with perfume and the heat of moving bodies. She can feel the eyes of the chaperones upon them, ever watchful for impropriety. Yet tonight, their scrutiny feels powerless. Tomorrow these same women will whisper about her mysterious disappearance. They will create stories to fill the void her absence leaves, but they will never know the truth of her choice. His fingers tighten imperceptibly on her waist, a signal only she understands. The music is ending, their time is running short. Around them, the other dancers begin to separate, offering polite applause for the orchestra. She sees her mother approaching with that familiar look of social obligation, the need to introduce her to yet another suitable gentleman. But tonight, there will be no more introductions, no more performances of daughterly duty and social grace. The final notes of the waltz fade into silence. They step apart as convention demands. He bows, she curtsies. To any observer, it appears as merely another dance between acquaintances. But in that moment of formal separation, they exchange a look that holds their entire future. Her slight nod tells him she is ready. His barely perceptible smile confirms the plan remains unchanged. In 30 minutes, they will meet at the garden gate, and their real life will begin. She moves through the remaining moments with dreamlike calm, accepting compliments on her dancing, discussing the weather with elderly aunts, smiling at jokes she barely hears. Her mind calculates the minutes until freedom. She excuses herself to the powder room, retrieving her hidden travelling cloak from behind the settee, where she concealed it hours ago. In the mirror, she studies her reflection one last time. The obedient daughter she will never be again. The garden air feels cool against her flushed cheeks. She slips through shadows cast by moonlight and gaslight, her heart hammering against her ribs. There by the iron gate, his familiar silhouette waits. Their eyes meet in the darkness, and suddenly all the fear melts away. replaced by certainty, by love, by the knowledge that whatever comes next, they will face it together. Hand in hand, they step through the gate, into the night, into freedom. Behind them, the ballroom continues its elegant dance, guests unaware that two souls have just chosen love over convention, chosen uncertainty over safety, chosen each other over everything else. The music fades as they disappear into the London fog, their footsteps echoing on cobblestones like a heartbeat, like a promise, like the opening notes of a new song, one that they will compose together, far from the suffocating embrace of a world that never understood their hearts. Chapter 15. Curtain Call. Love's quiet triumph. In the hushed moments before dawn breaks, when darkness still cradles the world in gentle embrace, two hearts prepare for their final act of defiance. The Victorian mansion stands silent, its windows like sleeping eyes, unaware that within its walls, love has finally gathered courage to break free from society's suffocating chains. The air holds its breath, waiting for this quiet revolution to unfold in whispered footsteps and racing hearts. The floorboards remember their weight, creaking softly as they navigate familiar hallways one last time. She carries only what her heart cannot leave behind, a pressed flower from their secret garden, a letter never sent. He grips her trembling hand, steadying both their resolve and their fear. Through curtained windows, the world outside waits in silver twilight, neither daring to speak above a whisper, knowing that even the walls have grown weary of keeping their secrets hidden. At the servant's entrance, frost kisses the doorknob like a blessing, or perhaps a warning. The hinges sigh as the door opens to reveal a world painted in soft greys and lavenders. Their breath mingles with the morning mist, creating small clouds of hope in the chilly air. Behind them, the grandfather clock chimes 4, its resonant voice seeming to count down the final moments of their captivity within these walls that have witnessed so much longing. The gravel crunches beneath their careful steps, each sound echoing like tiny thunder in the pre-dawn stillness. She pulls her shawl closer, not against the cold, but against the magnitude of what they're leaving behind. Generations of tradition, expectations, and carefully constructed lives. He guides her toward the waiting carriage, its driver a trusted friend who asks no questions, only offers silent solidarity in this moment of beautiful, terrifying rebellion against everything they've ever known. As the carriage wheels begin to turn, she looks back one final time at the mansion that has been both sanctuary and prison. Its windows now seem to glow with the softest amber light, as if the house itself is bidding them farewell with gentle understanding. The rose garden where they first touched hands sleeps peacefully under dew. The conservatory where stolen kisses tasted of jasmine and danger, all fading into memory as they roll toward their uncertain but hopeful future. The familiar silhouette of their former life grows smaller with each turn of the wheels, and with it the weight of countless rules that governed every glance, every word, every heartbeat. No more need for coded messages hidden in flower arrangements. No more desperate searches for moments alone. No more pretending their love was anything less than the force that moved mountains in their hearts. The mansion disappears behind a grove of sleeping willows, taking their past with it. In the growing light of dawn, pastel colours begin to paint the sky, soft pinks and golden yellows that seem to celebrate their courage. She rests her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. For the first time in months, neither watches the door for unexpected visitors, neither listens for footsteps in the hall, neither calculates the proper distance to maintain between their bodies. They are simply two souls, finally free to love without permission or apology. The countryside unfolds before them like an unwritten page, rolling hills touched with frost, ancient oak trees standing guard over their passage. Everything feels different now. The same sun that once seemed to judge their stolen moments now blesses their open affection. Her hand rests openly in his, no longer hidden beneath table linens or behind prayer books. The simple act of touching without fear feels revolutionary, like learning to breathe all over again in cleaner, freer air. Miles pass like chapters closing, each one taking them further from the suffocating expectations that nearly crushed their spirits. They speak in normal voices now, no longer whispering secrets like conspirators, sharing dreams they'd only dared imagine in the darkest hours of night. A cottage with windows facing east for morning light. A garden where they can walk hand in hand without scandal. Children who will never know the shame of their parents' love. Simple freedoms that feel like the greatest treasures. As the sun climbs higher, warming their faces through the carriage window, they begin to shed the careful masks they've worn for so long. No more practiced smiles that hide desperate longing. No more measured steps that never quite close the distance between their hearts. She laughs, truly laughs, for the first time since their courtship began. The sound rings out clear and joyful, startling a flock of sparrows into flight. Even the birds seem to celebrate their liberation from Victorian propriety. Behind them, the world they've abandoned continues its rigid dance. Morning tea served at precisely 8 calling cards, delivered at proper intervals, young ladies practicing their watercolours while their hearts ache with unspoken desires, young gentlemen composing careful letters that say everything except what matters most. But here, in this small space between past and future, love has finally found its voice, honest, unashamed, and beautifully, wonderfully free to speak its truth without fear of consequence. The coach horses maintain their steady rhythm, carrying them toward a horizon painted in hope. She traces patterns on his palm, marveling at the simple pleasure of unguarded touch. He watches her face in the growing light, seeing peace there for the first time. No more glancing over shoulders, no more calculating which relatives might disapprove, no more measuring their love against society's narrow definitions of acceptable affection. They are writing their own rules now, with hearts as their only guide. In quiet moments between conversation, they reflect on all the others still trapped in drawing rooms and ballrooms, still communicating through fan language and flower codes, still believing that love must be tamed, controlled, and parcelled out in socially acceptable portions. Their escape feels both personal victory and quiet rebellion. For all who cannot yet choose freedom, they carry the hopes of countless other hearts that beat against the bars of Victorian respectability, pioneering a path toward authentic love. The road stretches endlessly ahead, winding through countryside that seems to welcome their unconventional love story. They speak of practical things now, where to live, how to manage, but beneath the logistics lies a deeper truth. They have chosen each other over everything else. Comfort, status, family approval, social position, nothing mattered more than this. This right to love without shame, to touch without scandal, to build a life on the foundation of their heart's choosing, rather than society's expectations. As their old life becomes memory, their new life takes shape in whispered plans. A future where love doesn't hide in shadows, where affection doesn't require permission, where two hearts can simply be together, without apology. The Victorian era's rigid rules grow smaller in the distance, like storm clouds finally passing, leaving clear skies and endless possibility. Their quiet triumph echoes across the countryside, a gentle revolution that changes everything by changing nothing more than where love is allowed to live. And so this chapter closes, not with dramatic fanfare, but with quiet certainty. Love has found its way, as it always does, despite barriers built to contain it. Their carriage rolls toward tomorrow, carrying two souls who chose courage over comfort, who proved that even in the most restrictive times, the heart finds a way to triumph. May their story remind us that love, patient and persistent, ultimately writes its own happy ending, gentle, determined, and beautifully, timelessly free.